Thank you for joining us. We have another excellent topic for you. This video is about parenting plans. Okay. And as always, do want to again welcome you. Before we get started, my name is Genghis Shakhan. I'm the managing attorney here at Shakhan and Wilkerson Law Firm. We are a boutique law firm. I'm here on behalf of myself as well as attorney Chelsea Wilkerson. Today's video, as I mentioned, is going to be about parenting plans. I'm going to go through we'll walk through our roadmap here shortly. Apologize. Roadmap here shortly. But before we do that, I do want to again let you know this video is for educational purposes only. Um, by watching this video, it does not establish an attorney client relationship between you and the law firm of Shakhan and Wilkerson or between you and myself. That being said, why don't we go ahead and do a deep dive here into parenting plans? This is always a hot and exciting topic when it comes to child custody or if you're going through a divorce and there are children involved. And so we'll talk about how to create a foolproof parenting plan. And that's really, really important to moms and dads out there or guardians. And so if you are essentially have children, and if you are going through a custody modification, legitimation, a divorce, part of that action, that court action, there's going to be a parenting plan, and it'll lay out visitation schedule and a bunch of other things as well. So we'll talk a little bit about what a foolproof plan looks like today here. So building a parenting plan that works for your family and not against it. That is what we'll be diving into today. So we'll cover legal and physical custody. And of course, for those of you that already follow us, and if you don't follow us, I strongly encourage you to not just like this video if it's helpful, but to follow us. We cover a lot of legal topics in the criminal world as well as family law, divorce, and men's rights. And so we'll talk about legal and physical custody. The folks that follow us already know what that is. We're talking about parenting schedules, holiday and vacations, holidays and vacation schedules, decision making authority, some of the common mistakes that are made by parents when we are developing or when they are developing and coming up with those parenting plans, and then some tips for reducing future conflict. Part a lot of times of these custody modifications, there is a lot of conflict in the litigation. And so, there's sometimes some mudslinging, some fighting. And so we found that there are a few ways to minimize that conflict, to make everything go a lot smoother. And so we'll talk a little bit about that today as well. So why don't we just go ahead and just get started by defining what exactly a parenting plan is. It is a written agreement or a court order that outlines how the parents will basically share the responsibilities of parenting time. And that usually happens after a separation or a divorce. It can happen after a legitimation or, as I mentioned before, a custody modification. All right. And so the goal of a parenting plan basically is to create a little clarity regarding to what the parenting is going to look like when it comes to both parents, reduce conflict, and most importantly, to protect the child's interest, right? You'll always hear a lot about a standard of the best interest of the child standard. So the child is supposed to be centered in the parenting plan. In my professional experience, sometimes the child is the last person that's really considered in drafting these parenting plans. Usually, the parenting plans are for the adults who want to carve out what visitation is going to look like and also their obligations, responsibilities, and duties. So it should be child centered. Unfortunately, for most adults, it is not. It is parent centered. All right. So, what is legal custody? Let's talk about legal custody. As you already know, if you follow us, there's a difference between legal and physical custody. Both of them should be addressed in a good parenting plan. And so, basically, legal custody is who's going to make the decision making or the final decision maker in four respective areas: education, healthcare, religious upbringing, as well as extracurricular activities. Okay. And so the options are usually joint legal custody, or it can be sole legal custody. Okay, and so Usually, the way this thing works is with joint. That is, both parties have equal input. However, there is a final decision maker, okay? And we'll talk a little bit about that final decision maker, but usually the parenting plan will identify who that person is. And that is usually the party that, if both parties cannot agree, the final decision maker essentially will make a decision, and that will be it. Okay. So just to give you a real world example, if I'm a non-custodial parent and there's a custodial parent who is my ex-wife, if the ex-wife would like our son to play basketball during, let's say, during the summer in June, I would like our son to play football. We have a conversation about it because we have joint legal custody, so we both have equal input. And then afterwards, if we can agree, my wife says, "Hey, ex-wife, hey, basketball is what it's going to be, and then basketball is what it's going to be." She has the final say so because she is the custodial parent. I'm the non-custodial parent, but you can contract for something different in the settlement agreement. However, in most in most parenting plans, the custodial parent is going to be the final decision maker in those four areas, respective areas, when it comes to legal custody. Okay. Now, physical custody is what it sounds like. All right. It is who the child lives with the majority of the time, and that's going to be 51% of the time. And that person is going to be the custodial parent. The non custodial parent is usually relegated to visitation. Okay. But that is what physical custody usually looks like. And so you could have joint physical custody. Sometimes the parents will contract for that. Sometimes the court might order it. But joint physical custody is what it sounds like. It's really kind of a 50-50 split. You're looking at sometimes 1 week on, 1 week off. I've seen 1 year on, 1 year off, 1 month on, 1 month off. As long as it's not disruptive to the child, some judges, many judges may sign off on it. Some judges don't really care for it because it just opens the door to conflict later and invites the parties really to come back to court and relitigate because, sometimes if the parents aren't really getting along, sometimes there's new romantic partners. You're going to find more exchanges, doing more, child exchanges is just going to, create more vitriol and animosity and land you back in court, right? So instead of doing every other weekend, if you're doing every week, then you're seeing your ex-spouse on a weekly basis, perhaps. Okay. And maybe you didn't intend to see them that much following the conclusion of your marriage or your relationship. And so that can create problems, especially if you guys have some kind of a history. All right. So the goal is to create consistency for the child and really addressing the physical part of the custody arrangement. So, weekly parenting schedules, and I talked a little bit about that briefly, what they are going to look like. And they can involve weekends, weekdays, overnight visits, school nights, exchange times. A good parenting plan discusses them all. Okay. Some non custodial parents, for example, might have every other weekend. Some have first, third, and fifth weekends of the month when there is a fifth weekend. Some have every other weekend. However, during those off weeks, they may have a Wednesday overnight, right? Or a Tuesday where they get to pick up the minor child from school and then do a drop off, maybe later that evening after, dinner and homework is finished. Okay. So these things can look different in different parenting plans. Of course, it's going to be up to your attorney or up to you on advocating for what it is that you want to see happen. We always advocate for that non custodial parent to be as involved as possible because especially if you're coming from a marriage where the kids had access to both parents, it's a little jarring for a child to all of a sudden only be able to see that non-custodial parent, that person who's been designated as a non-custodial parent. And I think realistically, that is going to be the father every other week, right? And so we like to advocate for both parents to remain in the minor child's life as much as possible. But all of those things that I just mentioned, what the weekend, weekdays, those things are going to look like is going to be part, should be part of the parenting plan if it's going to be a good one. And you also want to avoid vague language, okay? Putting vague language in that parenting plan, because that's just going to muck it up and, create a situation where you can find yourselves back in front of the judge. Okay. The holiday schedule. This is usually a big one. And sometimes I've seen parenting plans where folks haven't really given a lot of thought or a lot of attention to the holiday schedule. And over time, it can become an issue, right? So, major holidays, things like Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, Easter, things like the 4th of July weekend, as well as Halloween. Those are some major holidays that should be addressed in your parenting plan. All right. So, and then of course, what you want to do in terms of who is going to have access to the minor child during those holidays. So, some people will, for example, on the Christmas, they may say, hey, we'll just split Christmas Day down the middle. Or some people will say, you get Christmas this year, and then I'll get Christmas next year. Usually, what it looks like is you'll get Thanksgiving this year. I'll get Christmas. Next year, it'll flip flop. I'll get Thanksgiving. You get Christmas, right? So all of that stuff is usually addressed inside that parenting plan. All right. And if it's not in there, then you're going to really set yourself up for failure, because there's going to be a lot of uncertainty when it comes to where the children are going to be on a year-to-year basis. Okay. And so that is usually part of the plan as well. And including that is Mother's and Father's Day. Okay. Usually it's pretty clear. Mothers get Mom's Day, fathers get Father's Day. And that usually has to be put into the plan as well. And we want to keep it very, very simple. And, again, minimize the confusion. Sometimes, we talk about Father's Day. You might want to have that weekend, right? That Father's Day weekend, not just the day. Okay. And so it's important because these days are going to, same with the holidays, if there needs to be language inside the parenting plan that it actually overrides the regular schedule. Okay. Because you have your regular schedule of first, third, and fifth weekend or every other weekend. However, there needs to be language in there that the holiday schedule is going to override it. The Mother's Day and Father's Day is going to override it because that might not be your weekend to be with your child. However, it might be Father's Day. Okay. And so it might, essentially be your weekend if it's Father's Day, because that day overrides the normal schedule, right? But that language has to be in there, all right? Unless you just have a really agreeable ex-spouse or partner, that and you can always do, if you guys agree to it, you guys can always there are always workarounds, okay? You can always make adjustments. However, that parenting plan, just understand it is going to be the default agreement, all right? And so that is what the court is going to hold you to, right? So the other thing is going to be birthdays, right? And so not just the child's birthday, but the parent's birthday or any siblings' birthdays. Those things are going to be addressed in the parenting plan. Will you guys alternate when it comes to birthdays? Are you going to celebrate together? Sometimes, there are parties that, will celebrate together if they're amicable, if they speak, if they can, get along. Not everyone gets along, though. That's important to know as well. If you've gone through a pretty nasty divorce, it might be challenging to bring those ex-spouses together into one room, right? Because of the animosity, right? So something to think about. Then, of course, some people will split the day. Say you get the birthday from this time to this time on this date, and then from that time, from another time to another time, I'll get the child. All right, I'll pick the child up, and we'll celebrate the child's birthday that date as well. That's going to all go into the parenting plan. Okay. Another big one is going to be summer break. That's going to be in that parenting plan, and this is going to really depend on if your child or children are school age, or if they're not, maybe they're toddlers. But is there going to be extended parenting time during these summers? These summer breaks if they're in school, or these vacations or summer camps, or are there notice requirements? And what I mean by notice requirements, usually we like to ask for at least is that June and July, if the kids are school age, 2 weeks in June consecutive, and then 2 weeks in July, usually at the beginning of July because the kids go back to school at a certain time. And then, the child will get to have that uninterrupted time with that non custodial parent. But sometimes, that can change, right? And so sometimes what we have is we'll have what one parent can do first right of refusal, and that's just going to be the non-custodial parent. So the non-custodial parent can essentially provide some notice, and you may say 60 days from June. So 2 months from the beginning of summer, you have to give written notice to the custodial parent that you are going to exercise your vacation time during this allotted time. Okay. And that way you can make sure that you are getting an opportunity to exercise your 2 weeks. And so, but that is something that needs to go into the parenting plan, needs to be explained. Always great to have an attorney that really has a background in this stuff because many lay people don't know what they don't know, right? They don't know what's missing from the parenting plan, what needs to go into that parenting plan to make sure that their rights are protected and that they can maximize their access to their kids. Okay. All right. So something that's really, really important to put that in the parenting plan. And that's going to go about, let's talk a little bit about school breaks. Okay. So again, if your child is school age, there are a number of breaks throughout the year that you want to plan around and maybe get access to your child. Spring break, fall break, winter break, there's teacher work days, and there's long weekends. All of that stuff is going to be on the table. Okay. And so maybe one spring break, you may want to hang out with your child, all right, or your children. Maybe, you want to do it off and on. So 1 year, and sometimes people will do odd and even, right? So odd years, the custodial parent will have spring break with the kids. Even years, the non-custodial parent will have spring break with the children. Okay, maybe you want to travel, maybe you just want to hang out, whatever, right? But it has to be addressed in that parenting plan. All right, school breaks, and that's going to also include those vacations. Okay, so you really want to set clear rules for what those vacations look like. And sometimes in the summer, again, if you're leaving, let's say you're leaving the country, all right, and you are traveling with your child, does there need to be notice, right? What's going to happen with the passport, the minor child's passport? Okay, do you have access to that passport? Okay, or if the child does not have a passport, sometimes we have clients who they are not in communication with that ex-spouse, and so we have to go before a judge and ask a judge to grant our client permission to obtain a passport on behalf of the minor child. So if there's rules that you guys have for international travel or even domestic travel, we've drafted things up requiring itineraries, addresses, things of that nature, and again, how much notice. So, for example, if there's going to be any out of the country or out of the state travel, we can draft things up that says, hey, if you're traveling out of state, there needs to be 60 days notice prior to doing so that we can take a look at the itinerary and make sure that we have addresses and contact information and anything else we might need to ensure that if there's an emergency, that we can get access to the minor child. Okay. Transportation is another one that needs to be in that parenting plan. So we're talking about pickups and drop offs. Sometimes parents, they have had domestic relations issues, and what I mean by that is maybe there's been a temporary protective order in the past, or maybe there's been some kind of family violence. And so pickup and drop offs might need to happen at a sheriff's station, might need to happen at a fire station, might need to happen at a public place like a Walmart parking lot, which is surveilled and has cameras. All of that would go into a parenting plan. Okay. The times of the pickup and drop off, where the pickup and drop off, the exchange location where the pickup and drop off will happen. And then what happens if someone is late, right? So we've seen that a number of times where someone is late, right? They don't show up, on time. So what happens after 10 minutes? What happens after 30 minutes, right? Is it okay to leave? Do you try to contact the other parent? Is there going to be makeup time? All of that can be in the parenting plan. It does need to absolutely be addressed. So I do want to pause and let you know that this parenting plan is pretty in depth. It's pretty deep. Hopefully, you're getting kind of some understanding of why a lot of folks will reach out and obtain counsel simply because this is a pretty sophisticated document that is really going to memorialize what exactly is going to happen when it comes to visitation with your minor child. Okay. All right. So jumping back in, diving back in, communication. What communication is going to look like between you and the minor child if you're the non-custodial parent or the custodial parent. So what do I mean by that? You may want to have access to your child on a daily basis. Usually there's something written into a parenting plan where the calls can be made during reasonable hours. Same with text messages or, FaceTime. But that might look a little different for your toddler, right? So you may not, so there might have to be some kind of a step up plan because if it's a toddler, you may not want to, have daily FaceTime with a toddler who, may or may not understand who's on the other side of that telephone. Okay. And so that's something that, again, we have a conversation that we have with our clients about what's going to work best, reasonable times for contact, and then what that contact ultimately is going to look like. And then education is another. I mean, it's going to be the same with medical. Who's getting report cards? Who's going to parent teacher conferences? Who's getting access to those teachers? Who's getting updates on behavior? Those type of things. All of that stuff needs to be addressed, and usually is addressed when it comes to the legal custody part, because both parents, have a right to have access and participate in the education and the decision making when it comes to medical regarding their children. Remember, there is a final decision maker. However, under joint custody, both parents do have equal or are supposed to have equal access and equal rights. And that goes for medical decisions as well. Who is scheduling appointments? Who carries the insurance? If there's going to be an emergency procedures, what's the process for that? And then even who makes decisions, right? If there's an emergency, is that parent that has custody at the time going to make real time decisions regarding medical emergencies, right? So all of that stuff needs to be addressed in that parenting plan. And that's going to be the same with extracurricular activities. Again, remember, joint physical, you both have equal input, but again, that final decision maker is going to be the custodial parent, usually. Okay. But you can contract for something different. So, who is deciding, who's paying, who's doing transport? Can these activities interfere with parenting time? This all stuff that's going to be addressed in that parenting plan. And the same goes with child care, babysitters, family members being babysitters, overnight child care. And this leads me into a really big possible deal, and that's going to be new relationships. So sometimes folks will get into, not even sometimes, most of the time, even if you're going through a divorce, at some juncture, you'll find that, you may have a new paramour, new boyfriend, new girlfriend, new love interest. And though it's not a way to dictate who your ex, might see in terms of, their romantic interest, you may or may not want an adult that is not related or married to your ex spouse or your ex boyfriend or girlfriend to do overnights with your minor child in the same house. Okay. And so we do address that in our parenting plan sometimes, especially if that's a concern for our client. But that's something that needs to be discussed. Usually is overnight guests. Of course, you want to keep the focus on your child. Now, relocation is another. Some folks will say, "Hey, it's not anticipated that you will move more than 180 miles or 120 miles from your current residence." And if that happens, then we need to either a mediate, or we may need to go back before a judge to discuss an updated or modify the custody agreement. And so that's something that can absolutely and should absolutely be addressed, because people do move, right? So, especially after a divorce, sometimes, people are in this state, and they were here during their marriage, and they decide, that they want to relocate post divorce, right? They may want to go back home, or they may want to go, try another city to live in. And so that all needs to be addressed in the parenting plan of what that's going to look like. And then lastly, your dispute resolution. Sometimes you can put in there that, hey, if there's a dispute, then we're going to go into mediation prior to actually filing a new action with the Superior Court. That can be addressed, or written notice, or we're going to go see a parenting coordinator. All of that can be addressed. And same regarding technology. So, having shared calendars, using co parenting apps. And that's really helpful for folks who aren't really getting along. You may not want your ex spouse to have access to your telephone number. And so there are co parenting apps like Our Family Wizard, which will capture communications, same way a text will, and, basically keep it all in one place. So that if there are issues that arise, you can always use that communication as exhibits. All right. So, common mistakes that we usually see in these parenting plans. One of them, the biggie, is going to be the, again, vague language, missing holiday schedules from the parenting plan, people who are ignoring future changes. And this is where, again, a lawyer is going to be worth their weight in gold, is because they can anticipate the things that are going to be needed going forward, not just what's needed in real time. No dispute resolution process if things don't work out. And the last big one is going to be focusing on the adults as opposed to focusing on the children. Okay, and so what makes a great parenting plan? We've discussed this. Is clear, it's detailed, it's flexible when appropriate, it's child focused, it's easy to follow. Okay. So that was about parenting plans. There are a number of reasons why, if you are going through a complex divorce, which is what we call a divorce that has minor children, and it has assets to divide, you should strongly consider hiring an attorney to help you identify issues, to help you draft clear and enforceable use language that's going to be used in that parenting plan, and anticipate future disputes. That's where an attorney is really, really going to earn their keep. All right. And so, if you are going through a divorce, if you are in the midst of a kind of a child custody fight, you're looking to modify, if you are going through a legitimation, we can help you out. You are welcome to give us a call at 404 999 9529, or 478 845 1213. And we'd be more than happy to assist you if you are looking to retain an attorney. Okay. So, an attorney is going to be very helpful when it comes to, as I said, drafting the parenting plans. Usually there's child support worksheets. You're also, there's going to be a settlement. There might be a settlement agreement. And so, all of these documents, if they are a family law attorney like us, handles a lot of divorce, child custody, even criminal defense cases. We're familiar with those documents. We're very efficient getting them drafted and getting them filed. And we'd be more than happy to assist and help you out. All right, if this has been helpful, go ahead and like it. And if you know someone that's going through a divorce or a child custody fight, or they have some men's rights issues, feel free to forward this along to them. And then, of course, you're always welcome to follow us. Okay, so if you like legal news, if you like these kinds of conversations and updates about what's going on in the law when it comes to family and criminal law, Make sure you follow us. Make sure you turn your notices on, and we'll be more than happy, as I said, to assist you if you find that you do need a lawyer in real time here in the state of Georgia. All right, guys. Thank you again, and we'll see you on the next video.